Hello and welcome to Saturday's special on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jack. We are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition, we're going to be focusing on the War Crimes Court. Again, welcome to Focus on Liberia. We are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. Welcome, welcome, welcome. In tonight's edition, I have the following. Joining us from Canada, we have Leo Nupulu Johnson. Leo, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you so much for having me, Mr. Jai. I'm looking forward to a very fruitful discussion.
Thank you. Also joining us from right here in Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, Georgia, is Carl Fambule. Carl, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you for having me, Dennis.
Also, we want to welcome from the city of Brotherly Love, the Chief Political Analyst of Focus on Liberia, Mr. Wilmot Kunney. Mr. Kunney, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here.
And let's welcome for the first time on Focus on Liberia, Mr. Kehleboe Gongloe. Mr. Gongloe, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gongloe, this is your first time, so in a special way, we extend to you our ceremonial cola. There's some water. Welcome again to Focus on Liberia.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me start with you a little bit about yourself, to my viewers, before we can get this started.
Oh, well, thank you, Mr. Jai. My name is Kehleboe Gongloe. I am a Liberian. I hail from a little village in Nimba called Gongloe. I'm a graduate of the University of Liberia and also Westchester University. I studied both mathematics and statistics, and I work with President Salih first term as Assistant Minister of Labor for Research and Statistics. I currently serve as adjunct faculty of statistics for Rowan University and Newman University, both in Pennsylvania, and I do all our hustle around the U.S.
You gotta keep the hustle real.
Yeah.
We want to welcome all our viewers again across the globe. This is Focus on Liberia. The discussion on War Crimes Court is everywhere in our Liberian community. Quite recently, Dr. Allen White had an interview on a sister platform and talking about War Crimes Court, how eventually it's going to come to Liberia. Also, Mr. Senator Prince Johnson was appointed or elected by his colleagues to head the Committee on Security, and the Embassy of America responded to that. We also see that in the Liberty Party, there are issues with that because the Liberty Party, Steve Zako withdrew, and as a result, Prince Johnson won on the white ballot, as we learned. So all this is going to come into place tonight. And so my question before we even start the discussion, I want to go around the room to get your feelings on this renewed discussion on War Crimes Court. Why is this happening, and why is this boost in talking about War Crime Court at this time? That's where I want us to begin, and let me start with you, Leo.
Thank you, Mr. Jai. And I will start by saying I don't think it's a renewed boost in Liberia, but I don't think it's a renewed boost when it comes to the mechanisms and in the international community itself. I happen to be the just 2019 United Nations Fellow for the International Decade for People of African Descent, and I was in Geneva for 3 months. And I can tell you that the issue of international war crimes is not a discussion that people put to the back seat. However, we know most of the countries that are drivers when it comes to the United Nations, whether it's the US, whether it's Great Britain, whether it's Russia, whether it's China. They all are very strategic based on their timing and when they do what. So it was very clear over the last 12 years that they felt that they had a deep-seated interest in supporting the administration that was in place and what should be done. So they didn't think they had a reason to pressure the issue. However, at this point in time, they feel that the time is ripe, especially when President Weah ran on the mantra, his party staged many demonstrations and protests at the United States Embassy with placards calling for war and economic crimes court. And in fact, it was part of their political messaging when they were actually running. So and also a lot of innocent people see him as the perfect person, someone who we have no known connection of the Civil War itself to be the best person that should be bringing this. So I also think that the level of impunity that people are seeing in Liberia and observing, and the posterior posture that we're seeing from some of the key players re-emerging and almost reasserting themselves to the point of almost saying, what we did was not wrong, we might do it again if we have to. And some of the posture they are taking, I think, is allowing the international community to push the issue more. And I would say the issue of war crimes code is not the matter of if, it's the matter of when. It's inevitable. The amount of atrocities that occur in Liberia is inevitable that there will not be war crimes code in Liberia of some sorts.
Thank you. Mr. Gongloe.
Well, thank you. You know, there's been a lot that has been said about war crime code. But let me just go back a little bit. You know, I listened to some of the arguments and some of those who are also against the establishment of war and economic crimes code. Some of the argument I've listened to people basically they talk about the fact that different peace accord give some degree of amnesty, you know, to warring parties. But I think Liberia in general, even though this opportunity is still there, we still go for it, we still stand for it. But I think we missed some opportunity in the past. I remember in 1995, when the warring parties went to Akasomo and signed some agreement, and the citizens in the generalities in Monrovia did not agree with it, they demonstrated. And that accord was put into trash, was abandoned, because citizens stood up. So at different stages in the war, there were different peace accords signed. And in these peace accords, they were given these kind of leeway to warring party leaders, like even the Accra Peace Accord. And there was no demonstration about that, you know. But I'm not saying the time is not right. I mean, there's no wrong time for advocating for justice, because crimes against humanity has no limitation. You can be tried after 50 years. There's no limitation on that. Okay? So, but I think this opportunity that presents itself, and that's what I think the events of the past week are considered a catalytic event and were necessary. And for me, I was happy that the election at the Senate even went the way it went. That's why even those who want to expel Senator Zago, I think they will be acting against history, because his inaction reinvigorated the whole argument.
Thank
so
you.
There's some positive.
We're going to get into those details.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let me go to Mr. Kunney. I keep seeing you go off and on. So let me get you now before you go away.
Obviously, we have always been for accountability in every area, in public life, in everything. The principles of accountability are paramount to any decent society. So I don't think there is a dissent on the issue of war crime code in Liberia. I don't think a lot of serious-minded Liberians has opposition to the fact that there should be war crime court to review the atrocities that took place in the war. Atrocities that impacted almost all of us. It would be hard-pressed to find a Liberian who was not impacted by that war. We all have personal stories of tragedies, personal stories of unnecessary death and destruction of our country. So there is no disagreement in many quarters regarding the issue of the war crime court. I think this issue, unfortunately, falls into one of the areas that are sometimes referred to as the unnecessary politicization of almost everything in Liberia. So that where we even supposed to find national consensus, politics get in the way, and then it appears like we are having differences. I think this is what is responsible for some of the discourse out there.
Thank you.
There is, if you look at the history of war crime court, the history of tribunals that are set up after conflicts, there is ample evidence as to how that infrastructure is put into place, as to how it is administered, and as to how people are held accountable. These are some of the things we need to be discussing to see whether we are at the place where we can reach that point of holding individuals who committed egregious crime against humanity in our civil conflict, whether we can hold them accountable. As we go throughout the show, we'll be providing some information on how some of these things need to be done. And I think where we are missing the mark by reducing it to a political argument, everybody trying to see what political advantage they can gain and what political point that they can score. That is the tragedy of the whole story.
Thank you. Let me go to Mrs. Pamela. Call.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with everyone. I think there is definitely a national consensus that there should be accountability for atrocities that were committed, that these things should not just go free. I think one of the challenges that I have is, as a lawful dual citizen of Liberia, right? One of the challenges that I have is this obsession with the Liberian citizens thinking that the United States is some board of directors for the Liberian government. And the idea of bringing forth a war crimes court should be something that is initiated through our elected officials. This is why we elect people. We elect them to office, then we absolve them of their responsibility, and we go to the embassy of a foreign country and ask them to do what our elected officials should be doing for us. And this foreign country's embassy has the responsibility to their own citizens, not to Liberian citizens. The primary responsibility is to their own citizens and their own taxpayers. And in many cases, the goals and objectives of this foreign country are in complete contradiction to the well-being of our citizens. For example, the Cold War, which was fought in Liberia, in Nicaragua, in Nigeria. The battleground for the Cold War took place in Africa and Latin America, in Asia. And a lot of the catalyst for our social conflict is rooted in the Cold War. A lot of the factors, the players that instigated the conflict post-Cold War and armed the assassins who came in and caused all kinds of trouble are the same people that we're going to and asking to come and settle our issues. These same actors benefited and instigated and are ultimately also responsible and we should be seeking legal action against some of these countries as a nation. But instead, we're going to the primary perpetrators, those who instigated, armed the conflict, filmed it in HD, were there from beginning to end, documented it, made sure that the actors that they were empowering were doing what they were doing, got rich off of writing books about it, got rich out of publishing pictures of our death. To this day, you go on Getty Images or any of those things. One photo of a Liberian eating human flesh is selling for like $1,200 on Getty Images. They continue to reap financial benefits from the horror that we experienced. And we're going to them to come again raise revenue, pay their investigators like Alan White absolvent amounts of money. He does not care about Liberian people. This is an opportunity for him to get rich.
Thank you, Cole.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we'll get to the Alan White issue. And that's, in fact, is my first question. Alan White had an interview with Mr. Henry Costa, where he basically signaled that war crime court is eventually coming to Liberia, and he's a big part of it. Okay. I don't know if you saw the interview, Mr. Gongloe. What is your take on that interview, on what Alan White said and how it has been received among Liberians, especially in the diaspora like you and I, or on social media?
Well, Ja, before I go to that, I just wanted to make a point to add a little thing to what Cole said earlier. You know, I think Cole points on some Western actor benefiting from wars in Africa. I mean, it's nothing new. It's something that will continue to happen. But it's actually a collective failure in leadership in Africa, you know, and the world increasingly is becoming a global village. So if you fail to act and others come, like others have argued. I listen to Pierre Lumumba the other day, and he said, but it was not Pierre Lumumba. There's a Ghanaian journalist, Kwame. I think his name is Kwame. He was arguing that Africans who argue for Chinese invasion of Africa, they don't have a point, because African government gave these Chinese pass visa to enter African countries. In fact, the missionaries they are bringing to exploit mineral resources one ton across Africa, they are gathered by African government security, state security, guarding. And I mean, they issued them license. Then ordinary citizens argued against Chinese government. But it's something that is happening legally, sanctioned by their own government. And some of us argue that we need Western countries to be held accountable. But we can only make this argument if there is a court that is investigating, that is going to hold people accountable. That's an appropriate forum. We need a leadership in Liberia that can stand there and say, look, there are logging companies that were doing business with Charles Taylor. And these logging companies are from France. We want these companies to account for the money, the exploitation of Liberian log timbers without paying legitimate taxes. We want these companies to pay, because we can identify these companies. There were Ghanaian logging companies in Taylor territory. I remember working, doing a research in Sino, the whole Sanquon River there. There were Ghanaian companies based there, you know. I mean, Liberty, Money, Gold, all of them. So we can make this point, but we need our leader who understand and who loves Liberia, who can stand up for Liberia. We need that. Right. Other than that, we're going to be sadly dictated to call. And that's the point I want to make. On the Alan White issue, I really don't want to, when it comes to fighting for Liberian issue, I don't want to kind of pass that responsibility to a foreign national. Because some of the issues Alan White raised are nothing new. There are different Liberian actors that have been advocating for accountability in Liberia for years, for generations. We can go back to the likes of Abapo and others. So the fact that we have now had a government that is, committed to accountability in Liberia, we can have different actors come and pretend to be more or less the catalyst in this process. But there are Liberians who have been calling for this. There are many human rights organizations. There are many, young activists. Take the likes of Yeyia Service. Look at Henry Costa. There are others who have been advocating. So Alan White did not say anything really new. And I mean, that's how much I can say about that. In my view, he didn't say anything new.
Are you saying Alan White is pretending?
Well, you see, the way I look at it, I don't want to say he's pretending, but based on my experience, he's genuinely a believer in accountability, given his record with the Sierra Leone Tribunal. He's generally a believer in accountability, okay? But I'm saying this is something we don't have to necessarily say is going to happen because of Allen White. There are credible Liberians and there are Liberian institutions, organizations that have been advocating, and I think we should focus on that and take it from there, as opposed to going the other way around. Because if we kind of pass that to a foreign national, what if Allen White drops there tomorrow morning? What happened?
Then we find another white. Let me go to Mr. Kunney.
Yeah.
Call. Mr. Kunney, should we be excited that the War Crime Code is finally coming to Liberia because of Allen White? Okay.
He's not hearing you.
Absolutely not.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up. What were you asking?
Yeah, I can hear you now. It's the same Allen White issue.
Can you hear me?
You're asking, please repeat the question. Yeah.
No, for Kunney. Let's Kunney. After Kunney will be you, call.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were okay. I'm having trouble hearing what's going on. Sorry.
Mr. Kunney, go ahead.
Absolutely not. I share some of the views that. I said absolutely not. Allen White should not be getting any credit. Some of the views Brother Gongloe and his sister expressed are valid. There are Liberians that have been calling for different things, different situations, different level of accountability in our country. And if it requires leadership to do that. And we're not getting to that level because, again, what I said, we unnecessarily politicize everything in our country. Instead of working towards national consensus to bring about some of these things, we start by casting blame. And that's the problem we have. Like my sister said, we have elected officials. Say, for example, who create code in our country? Who has the kind of responsibility to create code? The laws are there. The laws are clear. Especially, let me delink the economic code from the war crime code. Let's say we as a society, we are offended by the daily incidents of corruption in our country, the daily mismanagement of economic resources in our country, so we want to establish an economic code. Do we need Allen White to lead that fight for us? Is that what we're saying? If we want to establish an economic code to try economic offenders, the legislature has all the powers to do that. So I see that differently from the war crime code. For me, the war crime code requires a different kind of infrastructure. It requires a different kind of resources that will ensure that people will be held accountable for it. If you look at the historicity of these tribunals, whether it is at the end of World War II, whether it is the war in the Balkans, whether even it is the Sierra Leonean Civil War or the Rwandan Civil War, you will find that there was a strong international component that was put in place to ensure that people were held accountable, either for different reasons. Perpetrators of the acts were tried outside of the country, or in situations where they were tried in the country. There was massive international endeavor to do so. Right now, everybody is calling for war crime code in a country that is fragile. Then we cannot even contain looting in Zulu. We can't contain civil unrest in Maryland. We can't even agree that an individual that is found guilty of corruption in our country was actually corrupt. We can't even agree on that. And on top of that, we are saying that, oh yeah, let put a quote here and let the government go and start arresting people who they believe perpetrated the act. I want to believe that court, in as much as I want accountability for war crime, I want to believe that to insist that given our fragile nature, given the fragile apparatus institutions we have in the country, to insist that the government has constituted the way it is it can set up a war crime code and begin to arrest perpetrators. I think it's not a march towards justice. It's a march towards instability, in my opinion. So, and this is where you see the duplicity. This is where you see the duplicity of the international community. The United Nations were in the country. We had about 20,000 United Nations troops, 4,000 United Nations police. That infrastructure led by the UN, who are being put into place to bring these individuals to justice. I'm not saying war crime code will not come in Liberia. I just don't know whether we are at the level, whether the infrastructure, the basic things that are required to ensure justice, whether it fall into place. Mind you, we're not only talking about justice for the victim, we're also talking about justice for perpetrators. So maybe we don't even want to rush into a kangaroo type situation that will just be a show trial because we want to demonstrate that we want to hold people accountable.
Thank you, Mr. Kunney. I see that you are. I see your contradiction here. On one hand, you are saying you dismiss Alan White. On the other hand, you are saying we need a strong international presence to be able to have the war crimes court. How do you reconcile the two?
But Alan White is not in the international community. He's not. He's an individual that is campaigning for his self-interest.
Thank you. Let me go to Cole. On Alan White, Cole, Alan White had an interview with Mr. Henry Costa where he basically signaled that war crimes court is eventually coming to Liberia, and he's a big part of it. What's your response to that interview and how that position of Alan White has been received in our Liberian community?
Two things. One, I didn't listen to the interview. And secondly, I don't think that I'll just leave the second point. I don't follow Costa. But the whole concept of Liberians taking people who are not who don't have a good grasp of an understanding of the world and how it works, people who position themselves to be activists or political advocates who don't take the time to really understand the global power structure are put in the forefront of these kinds of very sensitive movements. When I was a college student, I was an actual child. I was, 17, 18, 19 years old. Now you have university students in their 30s. They're not well read. They could not name 5 books, contextual books about the history of African politics that they've ever read. And these are the people that the Republic of Liberia is looking to for guidance. This is problematic. No true activist in a country like Nigeria or Ghana would be giving this kind of credence to a mere investigator who inserts himself into these conflicts and writes books in order to make a profit. We like to use the Sierra Leone War Crimes Court. I don't know how many of us have actually studied it. A lot of the British people, for example, Geoffrey Robertson, who was the president presiding over the Sierra Leone War Crimes Court, he had to resign. I don't know how many of you know this. He resigned because he came under pressure. He had written books about the Sierra Leonean War that he made a lot of money on, and he was depicting the rebels as savages. The racist language that he used in his book is the reason he had to resign. This was some of the bias involved in the Sierra Leonean case. So we like to use this as an example for us to follow. It's wrong. We have to study these cases and see what was wrong with them before we jump out and say, oh yeah, Sierra Leone did it, Rwanda did it. Both countries have presidents that were actors in their civil conflict. Both countries have presidents who people have looked at and said, hey, Marabio, he was brigadier general. People came, they burn our town, they kill my grandma, they kill they kill everybody. Rwanda is not a good, yes, the Watusi people in Rwanda are extremely educated. They're able to run a country and manage a country. This is why Rwanda is successful, because the people in charge of the country are highly educated. highly educated. Some of the most educated African ethnic group is the Watutsi people of Rwanda. These people per capita, look at how many doctors and engineers they have per capita compared to Hausa or any other group. And they're extremely educated because they were pampered by the French and they were given the country. Long story short, Rwanda had a horrible genocide. It was wrong, but is everything okay with having the person who came in and invaded the country to take over and burned villages, killed probably over 50,000 people in his attempt to reclaim Rwanda, is now the presiding president, and like when people are there talking about, yes, we want to be like Rwanda, we want to be like Sierra Leone. How much do you know about the details of what happened in those countries and the war crimes courts? And on the last thing with the international community, international does not necessarily mean Europe and the United States. We have expertise, neutral experts in the ECOWAS region or in the AU that we can work with to help establish an international tribunal for what happened in Liberia. We have to explore all the options. We have to give it some thought, and we need thinking people to process this. We need our scholars, our elders. We need wisdom. We don't need shouting heads on Facebook.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me go to Leo Gongloe. I know you want to ingest it, but let Leo say something before.
Okay.
Yeah, it is interesting. I just want to clarify certain things first here. Number one, I hear Liberians when we speak, and I agree with some of the points made, by the way, by previous speakers, but I hear Liberians when we talk about people being educated and educated being equated to Western education and academics. I'm very troubled by that because in the first place, that is a disservice to the wealth of knowledge and experience that have existed in our African societies long before academics as we know it showed up. So sometimes I get worried about what are we equating to when we say people are very educated. Are we equating it to Western education with degrees and training, or are we equating it to holistic education, including the wealth of wisdom and knowledge that have existed long before we were introduced to anything called what is now being built as education before? So I struggle with it sometimes. And again, I'm not saying I have a magic bullet for what's right here or wrong, but I just think Western education have marginalized and dismissed what has already been there. Number two, when I look at Dr. Allen White, first of all, by Western standards, he's well educated and very well qualified to be talking about the things he's actually talking about. Dr. Allen White served as Director of Investigative Operations for the U.S. Department of Defense. He has a PhD, Management and Criminal Justice from Walden University. He has an MA from Central Michigan University. So by Western standards, he's well experienced and very qualified to be speaking in this area. But number two, remember, Dr. Allen White is a consultant and a lobbyist. He's a businessman. He's not doing war crimes code just because he cares about Liberia or just because he cares about Sierra Leone. This is his profession. This is how he works. So he's doing a professional job, in his opinion, that he gets paid for in lobbying these things that are happening and getting these contracts. Now, you can take that for what it's worth. Let's not misunderstand that to me. Dr. Allen White is coming to Liberia for war crime codes because he cares about what really happens to the people. Maybe he does. I don't know. But I can tell you first and foremost, he's a professional. But number two, let's call a spade a spade. The United States is the board of trustees. I'll not even say director. I'll take it one step. For Liberia, every time when I say that, in theory, we say what we were supposed to be, an independent country. Every time we've been left to our own vices, we executed ourselves. Every time we've been left to our own vices, we kill ourselves. And when we come to international community to do business, the terms that we agree to are the terms that are being implemented. It's not that we came to the international community and agreed to a different set of terms, and then the US came in and implemented. And first of all, when you cannot even honor 50% of your own country's budget, we are reckless, we are irresponsible, we cannot manage our own resources, we don't know what to do with it. We've been a failure. So we are left at the mercy of countries that dictate to us in terms of what should be done. And this is why I agree with Mr. Gongloe, that there is a serious leadership crisis and consistent leadership failure of African leaders consistently that has put us in this problem. Yes, the US have their part to play to continue to pursue their foreign interests and their foreign policy interests. China has their part to play to continue to pursue it. But it is our own leader that has set the tune and the basis for which has been the chief facilitator for these vices that have come onto the continent, Liberia being no different. So my question becomes, can we say Liberians by themselves to their own vices are capable of running a war crimes court when we cannot even pay for our judges within our own judicial system, when we cannot even pay for courts to reopen on time, when we cannot even train enough police people to guide Monrovia? No, we are unable. So we are left at the mercy of the international community to help support us in doing this. And in the process, we'll detect the terms. If we're serious, then let's begin to talk about the serious leadership issues first, rather than blaming the international community solely, in my opinion.
So
Mr. Gongloe, you wanted to
I wanted to respond to something, please, Dennis.
Let's Gongloe wanted to respond to you first. So let's
comment. I wanted to make comment on some of the issues Carl brought up, and particularly focus on Mr. Kunney. You know, I listened to Mr. Kunney. I mean, he was basically arguing that given the fragility in Liberia may not be ready for, any code of accountability. And I fundamentally disagree with that argument. I mean, if you look at the history of countries that have gone through, the Rwanda, Sierra Leone, I think Bosnia, other countries that have gone through, they've always gone through this process. In fact, when they are still fragile, one may argue that yes, there has been international peacekeeping force in the country at the time. But if Liberia makes a decision which must start with the legislature, if they make a decision and the government of Liberia, as a member of the United Nations, say, this is what we want to do, we are unable to do it. The resources will be mobilized and it will be done. And here is what I think we should have some degree of accountability. Not necessarily because we are at a point, Liberia is actually at a point that we can learn, like Carl was saying, the mistakes of the Rwanda Tribunal, the mistakes of the Sierra Leone Tribunal, because we are coming late. More than 20 years after our war, since our war, So we actually at a point that we can say, okay, we will want a regional court. We want judges from Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone to be our judges because they understand the African context. They understand the tribal dynamics of African items or politics. So we want the judges who come with cultural understanding of the region to be the judges to make this decision. So Liberia is actually a point to learn, to learn from the mistakes of all of previous courts. So I don't think we should do that because, Mr. Kunney, the point you're making, even to suggest we could delay, is dangerous. Because if you look, part of the reason people are burning down police stations today, part of the reason why nobody regards a police officer in I've been in and out of Liberia almost, since 2006. If I just came by from Liberia in 2019. Part of the reason why there is increasing lawlessness is because people feel that, all of what happened in this country, the horrible experience we went through, nobody was held accountable. People have stolen money. The richest people in Liberia are the people who work in government, are not the people who make business. So because of that, we can do anything. I was working for government. You driving through red light, the seller will knock with bang on the car and say, you are a rogue. Even you're not stealing. They have no regard for public servant. It's because in their mind, anyone who works in government is a rogue.
Right.
Okay? It's because there's no accountability in the country. If we continue this path, I said to some friends, we will become probably worse than Haiti. Because it's just a matter of time for there to be a spontaneous violence What is happening in Liberia? Liberia is actually at war with itself now. I mean, you every single day in Liberia, you see some dead body in some community. The police have never been able to go in that community and say, this was the cause of this death, person death, and this is the kind of people, number of people we have arrested. They are going through investigation. Some of us who are live in the country, who are work, who live in community, it's a terrible experience the country is going through.
Thank you.
We have to stop the excess. Otherwise, we'll become worse than Haiti.
Thank you. And Carl, you asked something, but let me add something on top of that. In your mind, what is the motivation of Alan White? And should that matter if that will give us a war crime court?
I don't want to discuss this guy anymore. I think that it's been exhausted. I think that it's obvious he's a consultant. He's looking for an opportunity to land another contract where he can go and investigate. You know, in his mind, he's an Englishman based on things that he's written himself. He doesn't see us as fully, you know, as evolved as himself. And that is not the type of person we need investigating us. You know, so I'm done with that, with his conversation. But to get back to this idea about Western education, education is not the property of the West. And modern education is a culmination in which we have contributors in the development of Western or modern education, what people call Western education, that are African historically. Did that evolve the education system, human education, global education networks, the advances of human intellect and science are not the property of the West. So let's get that straight. So when we talk about engineering, when we talk about science, we have all contributed. It belongs to humanity. And for Africans to think that if someone is a doctor or an engineer, that it is somehow some foreign concept to learn to be a scientist, to be a scholar, to be a thinker, that's wrong. Secondly, much of modern, so-called modern education is rooted in African philosophy, African medicine, African science, African mathematics. So if you look and study the history of scholars in education, it takes you back to the Moors of Spain, who are Africans, people who are very closely related to the Senegalese, the modern day people that live in Senegal. Our ancestors in Timbuktu, or whatever the Europeans refer to it as. We are not, you know, naked savages that were empty of void of education. And our traditional systems should not be looked at as something that should not evolve. Human beings, cultures evolve, and the more you learn, each generation builds on that in the past. So education is our property. It is not something that is foreign, period.
Thank you.
Having an African, I want to finish, please. Having an African-centered understanding of the world and being able to see the world through your own eyes is a product of acculturation or indoctrination, right? And so I think what Leo is trying to allude to is that just simply obtaining a degree does not mean that you're enlightened, because the ultimate goal of education should be for you as a human being to have dignity, to be enlightened, to be able to solve your own problems. And so you can get a degree and not have the understanding of the world through your own eyes and in your own context. And that is a tragedy. But when I talk about educated people, when I talk about Rwandans being educated, I'm talking about people who are centered in their culture, in their history. They respect themselves. They have doctors, lawyers, they have trained professionals, and they are Rwandan centered. They're Tutsi centered. They believe in their own ability to do things. And that is what Liberia is lacking. The dignity and the self-respect to move their own country forward. We're in the constant habit of condemning ourselves, putting ourselves down, instead of finding the people with the enlightened minds that are capable of doing what needs to be done.
So, Mr. Judge,
is it on the same education topic? Because
no, just briefly. I think it's very important on the show when these things leave hanging out there. We don't want people to sometimes.
Let me give you 1 minute because I don't want
no, just 1 minute. I would just be very quick, and I like to talk about the context of Liberia. I don't live in Rwanda, so I like to stick to Liberia. The only thing I would say, for how many years we've had a country, all of the educated people that we've had, multiple of them we can celebrate around the world. And you're right, Sister Kao, I agree with you. Africans have a long history of immense contribution to the field of education in other places. However, when we come to the context of Liberia, we are unable to produce a proper college in 2021. And this is where my context was going when I was saying, what are we defining as education? Our history in Liberia proves that every time the more educated we've gotten, and I like to call it Western education, I have a reason for saying that. I'm not saying education as a whole body is what I'm calling Western education, has subjected our traditional systems to be nothing. That has been the role of education, quote unquote, in Liberia. That has been the history of it. And we in the diaspora are yet to do much to change that trajectory. So until we can get to a point to be able to intentionally do some of the things you are describing, it is not a reality in our case.
Thank you. All right. Let me ask you this, and ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Focus on Liberia. We are discussing the war crime court and the politics around it. War crimes court palaver. Mr. Kunney, there has been a lot of politics. Yeah. There's been a lot of politics around war crimes court. Anytime people say war crimes court, you see a defensive posture from the government and supporters of government. So, you are saying we have to implement war crimes code, you want to tie his hands. And on the other hand, you see opposition, people in opposition pushing a line so that maybe they get some more wing under their wing. So war crimes, the issue of war crimes code has been politicized in that area. Why is it that way? Why do people think, especially people who pro-government, think that war crimes code means some form of attack on the government? And because of that, this war crimes issue has been politicized.
Okay, before I address that, let me just address one or 2 points my brother Kehleboe made. I mean, he said he disagreed with me, but even in the disagreement, he alluded to some of the variables I was making reference to. He talked about the security challenges. He talked about incidents of crimes and other things like that. I point to the fragility I was talking about. Now, I'm not saying that there should not be war crime code in Liberia because Liberia is fragile. I'm simply saying that, like we all saying here, that we should follow the history so that we do things better. If you follow the history of war crime code, it has not been done exclusively by that country of conflict entirely by itself.
And who is asking Mr. Kunney, who's asking Liberia to entirely do it?
Well, and that's the welcome to the politics. For example, if you hear say, "Oh, we're not having war crime code because we don't want war crime code," that's the politics. That's how the politics play. You understand? Instead of looking at what we need to do and look at the history of how these things have been done. Again, after the Balkan conflict, Milosevic and other people were trying it here. They were not trying the Balkan. There was no Balkan leader strong enough to go and arrest people like Kehleboe and other people that committed genocide in the Balkans. So it is the politicization of it when people think it as a responsibility of one politician. It becomes even more profound when the people that are making this claim are the very people that sat there. The TRC report is not a recent report. That report being around for almost a decade. Those who wrote the report, they were quiet. They were quiet. The loudest voices for the implementation of this report, they were there. They didn't say anything. So that is the unnecessary politicization I'm talking about. More so, the current president, in the move to find national consensus, has urged the legislator to work with the legislator to find a roadmap. Guess what? That advice is still in the legislature. They've not acted. Let somebody say, here, we elected our leaders to act on our behalf. Let us begin to hold our leaders accountable instead of doing the politics. So when you come to the opposition, they think calling for war crime will work for them. And to the government is also looking at political point because everybody is looking at alliances. They're not looking at the issue of accountability. Take, for example, the Prince Johnson thing. Prince Johnson being chairman of defense. It's not Prince Johnson first time being chairman of defense. Prince Johnson, That is his job. That's what he's been doing from the time he entered the Senate. But now opposition people are making issue of it because now they're making political calculations. So these are some of the duplicity that try to undermine this topic that all of us on the forum agree to. Since the discussion, there is not a participant here that say they're not for war crime court. All of us here for it. But we have to remove the politics inside to get where we want to be.
And I want to see how we remove it. But Cole, why is it that when we say war crime court, many in government, pro-government, think that that's an indictment on the current administration?
Because the current administration is headed by someone who doesn't talk to the citizens. The current administration is being headed by a person who is a failed leader. He does not even communicate with the citizens. I have never seen such a thing in the entire history of Liberia, where you have a president in a country as volatile as Liberia that does not encourage unity or coming together. He spends most of his time playing like a child. In the middle of crisis upon crisis, he says nothing. And this is the reason. How in the world can we be talking about blaming opposition for calling for war crimes court when the commander-in-chief of the Republic of Liberia, citizen number one, supposedly has legislation waiting for the lawmakers to review, and he says nothing to the citizens? Why would he not come out and say, hey, my citizens, this is what I'm doing. I'm waiting for your lawmakers. Go and talk to your lawmakers. Tell them what you think. He'd rather play soccer. Whole day we hearing about woman business. Whole day we hearing about nonsense. When will he be president? How many years does it take him to understand his responsibilities? And Mr. Kunney, with all due respect, how in the world can you say that opposition is using this for political points? We are citizens of that country. We've had great losses. I mean, Senator Johnson is not the only person who would be dragged in front of a tribunal. There is a list of individuals. Some of them are in opposition political parties, different ethnic groups. And I want to also believe that the reason you're hearing all this noise about Senator Johnson now is because the difference between 2021 and let's say 2008 is that most Liberians are now on social media and they're utilizing the internet in ways that they did not utilize the internet, 12 years ago, 13 years ago. So people are sharing more information. People who probably have a lot of time on their hands and less educated, less knowledgeable, have a lot of time on their hands, but they have a global platform to speak. And if they're vulgar enough and rude enough, they'll get a huge following. It doesn't mean that that's what the majority of people in Liberia think. There's a lot of people on social media are just loud and wrong and obnoxious. That's not what drives policy in the country. Let a president talk. Let him explain to the people where he's taking us. It's like having a driver who's blindfolded in the car speeding and he doesn't say anything to anybody. We're just holding on for dear life. Let President Weah talk to us.
Mr. Gongloe, let President Weah talk. Those were the final words from Cole.
Yeah, listen, I listen to Mr. Wilmot Kunney. I mean, the whole issue of opposition snowballing the war crime court issue is nothing new. But, it speaks to a fundamental issue. Like the point I made earlier, there is a colossal failure of leadership in Liberia. I mean, those of us who lived through or in Liberia, we saw failure in leadership at different points during the peace process. Okay, for example, when President Sally came to power, she campaigned on the question of human rights.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the late Paul Mulva was, I believe, either in the campaign like security or something like that, but when it came to appointment, she said no. In fact, either he was a nominated or he came close to being nominated, and she rejected it.
Yeah.
Okay, that because he had been linked to human rights abuse under Charles Taylor. Okay, when it came to the TRC, the TRC had different components. There were, different level one. They had some group of people recommended for trial, another level, including her. I think she was banned for like 30 years, proposed to be banned for 30 years. But that was a complication. She was a sitting president who was going to impose that ban. That was a self-censorship. Moral authority was demanded of her. That, do the moral thing. But during that time, who was the loudest campaigner for implementation of the TRC report? That was the current government in waiting. This current government waiting. They were the loudest campaigner for war crime code. And talking even, by then, Senator Johnson was in opposition, right? In 2011, in Secretary, at the Secretary Convention, when he went to, anybody can Google that, Senator Johnson acceptance speech at the NUDP convention in Secretary, I believe that was either in, was it June 2011? Somewhere there.
It was 2011.
2011, but I'm just thinking about the month. He gave a speech. In that speech, he called for the full implementation of the TRC. Because by then, politically, he felt that President Sedi would not go for it. So he thought it would be a political package for her, that he himself would call for it. Even just last night, I listened to him, he was on one interview. He said, look, I am from Nimba. There were more than 3,000 people from Nimba killed by all the forces. I want those people who killed the Nimba citizens to be held accountable. He's made that, but so he's made that point. I think the challenge is, even on Sali, the opposition call for the implementation of the War Crime Code, TRC report. We are, opposition is doing the same thing. So I don't even look at maybe changing the goalpost, but I look at there is one standing out of government and always demanding government to do the right thing. And when they were there, they didn't do the right thing. But they're in the same position that other people were in. So, but I think it is fundamentally sad that something that, pertains how stable Liberia will be for the next 20 years, the next 50 years, even for us to pass down to the next generation, we take it for joke. We snowball it.
Right.
Accountability is a fundamental issue. We must do it.
Thank you. Leo, and Mr. Kunney, you will respond, but let me go to Leo because this whole thing has become a political football, according to Mr. Gongloe, and I like how you lay out that depending on where you stand, you want war crimes court. If you're on the other side, no, you don't want it. You want to kick the can down the road. This war crime court has been politicized, clearly.
Yeah, and I fully agree to that, Mr. Ja, and I agree with most of the comments that Mr. Gongloe made. First of all, the whole war crime court thing it's a travesty of justice in every form if you actually look at it. First of all, everybody's saying because of security of the country right now, I struggle to understand. War crime court is meant to establish the rule of law, but also meant to develop our security sector when it comes to delivering justice. If I were the government, right, and we see that international community is stepping up pressure, people in our own country, our own advocates have been calling for this, and our own people in our own political party protested for this stuff. This is the time to start laying out the mechanisms to the international community and our friendly partners to say, this thing is important. But here are the conditions that we are looking at under which this would be feasible. We should be providing the leadership to detect the terms that says we would need to beef up the security sector in this way. We would need to beef up the army. We would need to beef up the police. We need to ensure the court look like this. Those are the kind of discussions we are supposed to be having. And not putting our hand in the air and say, oh, the security is not strong yet. The security sector is not ready yet, so we should wait. You should be telling the people, say, this is a perfect opportunity for Liberia to leverage, to say, okay, since there seems to be some kind of consensus here with international partners, with people, they already know where we stand as a government. We don't have the financial resources. Let's start coming up with a plan that will allow us to leverage this opportunity so that even after this exercise, Liberia will be way ahead. Number two, the way I look at it, It's very, very practical, Mr. Ja. The reason the issue of war crime court is resurfacing like this is because some of the people who we have video evidences of some of the most heinous crimes are coming out and saying, no, I did not commit that crime. We listened to Senator Johnson saying, no, he did not kill Council Roberts, period. In fact, he explained a complete different story versus what we saw on the video tape that transpired in their conversations and from eyewitnesses that were present. So if these perpetrators are not remorseful and saying, forgive me, what I did was wrong, they're saying, no, I did not commit the crime, I am not guilty. That is when we should even tell them, say, thank you, then let's allow you to exonerate yourself in a competent court against the evidences that are against you. But instead, we will miss this opportunity again for development, because I think the War and Economic Crimes Court can be a serious vehicle for development by helping our international partners to understand what type of resources we need to mobilize and invest within the sectors that there be, even our own justice system, to invest in it to be capable of being able to ensure that. And like Cole said, and like Mr. Gongloe said, learning from even research, dispatching our judges and our people to Sierra Leone, to Ghana, to South Africa, to see their models, to Rwanda, see the mistakes, document them, and then start to put proposals forward that can correct those mistakes and make sure we come up with a better setup than some of the errors that we've seen in the past.
Thank you. Mr. Kunney, it looked like you are alone in this concerning the implementation. You heard the speakers.
No, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. Hello?
Yeah, where are you?
Yeah, I'm not alone. You see, the more we go in circle, the more we try to reach an agreement. There is an agreement here that the issue of the war crime code is a political tool. In fact, that was my introductory remark. And Gongloe's statement confirms that. Depending on where you stand, it becomes a political issue for you. And this is where my regret was, that even issues that we have consensus on, we unnecessarily politicize it. And it is a political issue because just as the opposition that is now the government make it a political talking point, all we're hearing is a talking point from today's opposition. It will interest you to note, not a single opposition leader up to this point has committed to establishing the war crime code if this current government don't do it. So it's just talking points. So this is what I'm saying. Let's go beyond the talking points. Let's go beyond it. If you read a PRC report, there are certain violations that are international, that should be accorded international prosecutorial standards. There are certain violations that are punishable by the laws of Liberia, by the penal code of Liberia. If we want to set an example of bringing people of bringing accountability, those of us that believe in this thing, let's organize and put the evidence together and carry the cases that are supported by our own penal code. If we're not interested in the politics, all of the time we spend in politicizing this, we could be gathering evidence. Look, a lot of crime took place in the war. Murder, rape, all kinds of things. These are laws against the penal code of Liberia. So even without the war crime code, a serious group, serious-minded people can gather evidence and prosecute these individuals. If we are playing politics with it.
Mr. Kunney, that's where the leadership come in. What we are saying is the current leadership is not being responsible when it comes to that.
The leadership is not one. Dennis, you know my concept of leadership. The leadership, it even becomes political when you make it an individual issue. We have the entire government. We have the most powerful institution, which is the legislation that makes laws.
If I can just interject here. If I can just interject here quickly.
Go ahead.
Mr. Kunney, let me tell you.
Let me interject, Mr. Kunney, you will conclude.
I think the fundamental thing we're missing here is, it's not like agreeing with you. I mean, I said it's snowballing this issue. But look at the two leadership in recent time, like the two ruling government in recent time, in recent Liberian history. President Salif, when she wanted something done by the legislature, it got done. In fact, 4G speed. Okay? Joshua, when he wanted a loan agreement signed with the government, regardless of the public outcry, it was done. President, we have sent a note, a letter to the legislature and say, I want your advice. It's more than 1 year. He has not asked the Speaker of the legislature or the President Pro Tem Abachi to say, I want to respond. Because he doesn't want it done. I mean, all of us, we should not play in the hands of these unserious group of people. We must all say individually, collectively, that there is a colossal failure in leadership in Liberia. Whether it is under the Sali administration, whether it's BAWI administration, we should say it's a fundamental issue and it's dangerous.
Thank you. Let me come to this thing because all of you mentioned Prince Johnson.
Oh, can I come in now? You say you were interjecting for me.
Oh, okay, yeah, you are right. Go ahead. You have the floor. 1 minute.
There is no disagreement on the failure of leadership. The only disagreement is if you make that failure only a one-man affair. We represented that will pay almost $40 million. $40 million of public funds we pay them. If they're not working for us, we need to take action. You see, we made the mark when instead of going to the legislature to present our petition, we either run to the U.S. embassy or to run to the executive marshal. I just dislike this whole concept of an imperial president. So if the president sending a file is not coming up, the speaker got no responsibility, the Liberian people get no responsibility. It is only the one person that powerful in the country. I reject that.
Mr. Kunney, I don't think any of the panelists has said one person, the president. Okay, that's not what they said.
But the failure of leadership is usually a coded word for the president. The failure of leadership is a coded word for the president.
You are not making that assumption for us.
No, because Mr. Kunney, the problem is historically from 1847, we have basically we don't have an independent legislature. Whenever the president wants something done, it's done the same day. I mean, even if the president wants somebody expelled from the legislature, the president expelled the same week.
Or from the Supreme Court.
You can go in history.
Then that's our failure.
Ellen Snow was a sitting speaker. Ellen Snow was a sitting speaker. When powerful people wanted him out, he was out.
Yeah.
Ellis Tyler, the same way, one day out, he was out.
It is our failure.
Eton and Igbo my loan agreement. It was done the same. I mean, so if the president wants anything done, that's how people go there because they know the presidency matters.
Thank you. And what I was saying is the name Prince Johnson has come up.
So let's dissolve the legislature. Let the president rule by decree.
Actually, somebody has made that proposal. Actually, that they are useless.
Let the president rule by decree.
Yeah,
somebody has made that proposal that they are useless.
In the meantime, let the president be working. At least in the meantime, he execute CDC policy for the war crime court.
I don't know when Mr. Kunney will hold the president accountable small, but let's make progress. Anytime we mention war crime code, the name Prince Johnson comes up. And on the panel tonight, the only reason we mention this is to give an example, or because of what the position he got in the Senate, which the American, kind of pushed back on. Some said that was meddling into our domestic affairs, but we'll come to that if we have time. But my question here is, another question here, there are other warlords, the George Bulley, the Yeyia Nimle, the Alhaji Nkrumah, Sekou Damate Kong. So anytime we mention Prince Johnson, is just, I don't want to say a symbol, but that represents all what we passion. But let's come to the issue of Prince Johnson. And I want you to tell me if, because sometimes we say leadership, and we are talking about government. But I want to see tell me where the people will come in. Because Prince Johnson has become, depending on which side is on, the government, when they want the vote of Prince Johnson, they want his endorsement. So whoever is in power is going to seek for that. When they are not in power, they want war crime code against Prince Johnson. This reminds me of a lady in Ganta that a friend of mine who lived in Ganta told me about. I think her name was Kou something. Kou was have a mental challenge. But every year, almost every year, Kou is having a baby, and maybe the name is wrong, but So Cole is having a baby. And the fathers of the baby people said were well-to-do people who would drive their cars and go visit her. But in the day, so Cole noticed that and said, and when Cole is coming in the market, everybody's driving her away because they don't want to see her. She's what is considered a crazy woman. So she said, in the night, is Cole come here. In the day, is Cole go away. So it is this Cole phenomena that Prince Johnson is facing. At a time we need Prince Johnson's vote either from the Unity Party. He's the kingmaker. If we don't need it, we want war crime court for Prince Johnson. So is Prince Johnson right when he says, soon you see me, you talk about war crime court, war crime court? Does Prince Johnson have a point here? Let me start with Cole. Or it is this Cole phenomena from Ganta?
I think there's people that openly stand with Senator Johnson. I think that, the stigma of the video execution of, Samuel Doe is what people rally around and why people vilify PYJ over people who committed far worse atrocities, frankly, than Prince Johnson did. I mean, the idea that we have people that are sitting in appointed positions currently, a whole minister, that was in charge of Nobel. We've got all kinds of people that committed heinous crimes. We all danced to Sunday God, Dear Boy, and he committed some of the worst atrocities during the war. It's documented in the TRC report. We talk about Prince Johnson because of Samuel Doe. That's a fact. That is the reason that he has become a poster child. He's certainly, committed war crimes, his own admittance, or his group and himself, but it certainly was not the most heinous. He didn't fight for the longest period of time. He didn't commit the greatest atrocities against the Liberian people. The reason that he's singled out is because he publicly, or not publicly, but he executed Samuel Doe on video. That is the real truth. Because if we're going to talk, none of his victims are any different from the victims of the other criminals or the other perpetrators, I'll say. None of his victims are any different from the victims of the other perpetrators. My father was murdered in cold blood by someone who was recommended for prosecution. He died of natural causes. We never got justice. But my father's life was not any less valuable than the lives of other people that were killed allegedly by Prince Johnson or Halahaji Kurma, whoever else. So we sit here, the hypocrisy, pretending to be advocating for innocent victims when the fact is people are angry that a president, a brutal dictator that they benefited from, was killed. And that is some of the reason why they're giving PYJ extra political capital in Nimba County. Because it's people who were victimized are saying, hey, I understand what you're saying. Yes, this man went to Caldwell and did things. What about the people that killed me, my children, my mom? You're not talking about them too. So this thing, that tribal witch hunt, you're just attacking the Gyo people. So the narrative we're putting out there is empowering, actually, the base that supports Senator Johnson, inadvertently. Opposition isn't harming him, they're empowering him. I say this all the time. We cannot talk about war crimes court and have this undue bias and single out one human being because of our personal bias. It's ridiculous. Let's talk about everyone. Let's talk about justice. Let's, as people who are in the public light, let them be fair and balanced in their presentation of this to Liberian people, or they're already causing conflict. It's already looking like a witch hunt. If that PYJ y'all want, y'all go carry PYJ to court. Y'all stop talking about war and economic crimes court. If you really want to bring justice for the Liberian people, there needs to be a commission, a presidential commission of panelists or a group of thinkers that will sit down and plan this thing properly. Constantly just looking at one person and attacking. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And it takes away from the legitimacy of the intent of the process.
Thank you. Leo.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to disagree with some of the points, but before I say that, I wanted to humbly just mention something, Mr. Jada, I was uncomfortable with. I've always complained that when we speak to the presidency represents the highest office in our land. I care less whether it's a cat or a human being or Joshua, whoever else is there. I was a bit uncomfortable with how the term and the way Cole referred to the presidency earlier on, and I was a bit uncomfortable with that just because I felt that we're talking about the presidency of the Republic of Liberia, and I will hope that we all can continue to uphold the highest respect in demeanor, in words, and the way we refer to it. But to the issue itself of Prince Johnson, I can understand how we get concerned about people who get in public life or who get involved in these type of activities and have thin skin. So it's okay. Prince Johnson goes to his church in Liberia and calls whatever he wants to say to anybody. He's done it multiple times for different people. Who else becomes everyone that becomes his target for that week? He goes to his pulpit. He takes an hour. He berates them. He even want your children about. And then I'm supposed to be concerned because somebody target Prince Johnson for war crimes. No, I am not. Because the reason I think there is nothing wrong with it, everybody have a reason for targeting certain people. If your pin from the wall was greatly under Prince Johnson era, under his era, wherever he was, and that was where the greatest atrocity was committed for you, or that was where honestly, when you talk in context of the war, you were talking in context of Prince Johnson. If you were under Charles Silla number 2, the most vocal person who's always responded whenever they talk about it, it's Prince Johnson. He behaves like he is the only person, even if his name is not mentioned, he feels that. So we can be holding people responsible for what Senator Prince Johnson feels. When Darius Dillon spoke, I watched the whole video. Actually, Darius Dillon had context for speaking to war crimes. He was talking about the issue of impunity and accountability. And he said, for example, we've done the same thing with war crimes court in this country. And because we keep joking with it and I'm bringing it, and all of a sudden, Senator Prince Johnson felt offended. So are you telling me now nobody has the right to use war crime codes as an example of accountability? So for me, I care less. I think it's a distraction to talk about, say somebody's targeting Prince Johnson. Nobody's targeting Prince Johnson. Prince Johnson is uncomfortable with his own demons. So he gets uncomfortable when these things are actually talked about. There's nothing wrong with even mentioning his name because he bears one of the greatest responsibilities according to the TRC report, according to all of the things that we've seen, him and many others. So he's one of the key architects and one of the key players.
Thank you. Mr. Gongloe. Get some water there. And
you're able to name 5 people other than Prince Johnson?
This is focused on Liberia. We are discussing the war crimes court. Go ahead, Mr. Gongloe.
Okay. Listen, like I said earlier, I want to discuss more conceptual issue and in context as opposed to maybe individual name. I didn't, but on the PYJ, on the Senator Prince Johnson issue, I think we need to be careful here. There are some people who are very crafty, who understand how to engineer public opinion on their side. Exactly. So there are times they even look for issue to use as a rallying point when they're even losing ground to their own people. They try to look for issue to hang on. And I could see a combination of things like that interplay here. That they may not generally be doing this. I mean, I live in Liberia. I remember years by Henry Costa would talk on something like this, and somebody would pick on Henry Costa and make it a war between he and Henry Costa, because Costa was also a popular talk show host. By doing that, you also get popular. You also garner local public sentiment in your favor. So we need to be careful in here about, whether somebody somewhere is not, deliberately trying to engineer the opinion of his people, in his corner using this, So that I wanted to make that point first to dispose of it. But on the question of the whole issue about war crime code versus Senator Johnson, and I made a point earlier, Senator Johnson in his own narrative, not me. 2011, he's credited of giving a speech that he called for the full implementation of the TRC report. Just last night, There is a girl in Australia. She's called Susanna Bangay. I think she's Gio from Nimba. She had a podcast, an interview with Senator Johnson, and I listened to him. He said, I am for it. I want war crime code. I just don't want me to be singled out. In the other context, I want also understand, I want those who are listening to also understand is that it's not more, and I told some of my brothers from Nimba or supporters of Senator Johnson before, several years ago, I told them, I believe that was in 2009, we're in a conversation in Liberia, and I said, look, let me tell you guys, there's something about the human mind, and politics is a very touchy game. As long as we have the senator politically active, there are people who are opposed to him. They're going to make statements that he may feel uncomfortable. For many years, George Bole was not being targeted, even though George Bole forces committed some of the worst crime in Riverside. Like I was in Sino. I did a contract in Sino 1999 for UNFPA. I was in Sino for 27 days. I went to most villages in Sino. The level of destruction that I saw in Sino, I never thought that FPC, we should largely support and crime, and the crew people fought like that. They destroyed Sino. You know, yeah. I slept in New Fort Town. I died intersection, Rogan to, I think, ENR mission. In fact, the whole ENR mission was level. I went there to just see it with Bishop. And I saw the level of destruction. I said, wow, this is how the Civil War devastated Sino. So, Mr. That's right. George Bole was not been mentioned until he became what? Representative. So when he became representative, the other day, Representative Dixon Symbol challenging, it became an issue. Because who talks about Yeyia Nimle? Who talks about Segu Damate? Who talks about the other one, the other one who turned pastor, because all of them can become pastor. One naked. Yeah, he committed worst crime in his own narrative. But because they are not in politics.
Gongloe, before you end, I just want to buttress what you just said about George Bole. His LPC, I don't know when you were in Sano if you visited Dripo, my hometown of Dodwicken, it was completely burned down by
Biblican or
Dodwicken. That is 40 miles from Greenville.
Is it on the walls toward Dodican area?
Towards River G.
Oh, River G.
Yeah.
The Sanquin area? Sanquin?
No, Sanquin is the coastal area.
Okay.
This is not.
But I went to many places though. I went to many. We're doing surveys, so we visited almost.
Right.
And
so George Bole burned down the town.
Yeah.
And his forces killed my father. Just want to mention that.
Yeah.
All right.
I still remember a village called Zawonja. I slept in Zawonja.
No, that's not.
There was a hunter there. He killed 5 deer one night. He slept in that village. And we had
the forest something arrest him?
No. In fact, then he was smoking opium openly. And I said, why are you smoking this? He said, that's the only thing we have in Sando now.
Amen.
People used to make opium fine when I was there.
Amen.
Openly.
Right. So the issue here about it, you mentioned something, say when we're discussing this about PYD, we need to be careful. I was interjecting. When you say careful, what do you mean?
Exactly.
No, I'm not talking about I was saying, somebody, I think Leo, the question, the way you frame the question, like, oh, why is he the only one who always talk whenever they talk about war crime? I'm saying, we need to try to understand how some people can be smart to garner public or local support. So they hang on to issues that they believe. When they cling onto that, we reinvigorate their support locally. Okay, so it may be deliberate. Not that he's the only person. Senator Johnson knows that he's not the only person. In fact, he fought the war for a shorter period compared to Charles Taylor forces or Haji Kromah forces,
Exactly.
and other people. You know, his forces didn't even hold ground. They only sat in little cower, you know. So other people who covered the entire country, they're far worse than his forces.
Right. The length of
trying to
time
get
doesn't determine the level of atrocity. So
Exactly, it doesn't determine the time frame. Doesn't
No, you see, Ja, the point I'm making is
no, I get your point. I get your point.
You see, on the question of because when we all jump, there are some people who jump to this TRC thing.
Yeah.
My gut feeling and what I've researched of late I was just reading the rune statute.
Yeah.
For it's not TRC is not even the foundation for war and economic crime. No, because if they still refer the matter to the prosecutor, they are going to commission completely new investigation.
Without TRC, they will still
without TRC.
Doesn't matter.
It's going to be a totally new investigation.
Yeah, it's just that the TRC has a and that's why people keep.
Yeah, but
because I think because those who discuss this issue cannot make the thing difficult for people to understand.
No,
the TRC is a separate instrument. Yeah, it gives some insight into what occurred, but not what the rune statute will be based on.
Thank you. The question was also coming to Mr. Kunney and he dropped off is the voters, right? Because we may say leadership, we may blame or the Ellen administration, the Weah administration, but what about the voters? Because it's the voters who, depending on whose side Prince Johnson on, they will protect him, like how Mr. Kunney has positioned himself tonight, right? Because like it or not, what he's doing is definitely kind of protecting or not being able to hold the current government accountable. And the voters are the one that are voting for these people. The voters are the one, when Prince Johnson is in their favor, then he's the kingmaker, they are voting for that. If he's the other way, then they want him to be prosecuted. The rest of it. So to what extent has the Liberian people themselves been responsible for the lack of war crimes court or the appearance or having war crimes court or not? What blame can we put on the Liberian people, Leo?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would say I put very little blame, Mr. Ja. I've heard people say this all the time. How should the Liberian people walk away from people like the Prince Johnsons of the world when nobody post-war Liberia has made any serious effort for war crimes court? So the Liberian people are hopeless that it's not coming. You go, even this conversation we're having, Mr. Ja, it's only in urban areas. You go to the countryside and think, this is not even happening. And this is what we know during Liberian war. Whenever a certain faction capture a certain town or a certain village, right? And then another forces came and the people aided those forces and drove out that particular faction. And then the people in the village with that new faction that took over. When that faction comes back and retook the village, you know what they did? They executed everybody. Look, people learn lessons from this war. So people know that when we were killing ourselves in Monrovia, in Liberia, warlords were moving around. We know how long it took for anybody to come to our cry. So people already know that these people have people that are loyal to them. You think they will go and abandon them for the hope that, oh, you know what, one day, somebody will show up. When our leaders are saying we don't think we need war crimes court, so our people have been left in a hopeless situation until somebody can genuinely give them cause and reason that they are interested in giving them justice. Why should they listen to anybody? Why should they not vote Prince Johnson over who? Over just giving who? Over who? People like Prince Johnson. So in my opinion, if we want to aid and empower our people to seek justice for the crimes that were committed against them and move away from supporting warlords and the rest of them, we need to give them a true, real, sincere incentive that make them realize that if I go this way, I will get justice. I will not follow somebody who will dump me after 12. They say, you know what, we decided to work on code in that time for a year, so we just leave it in that way. So you can blame our people. They've been deceived many times and they're not going to allow themselves to get bitching again.
Thank you. Corey, here's a question for you from Tepa Pupo. He said, we as Liberians need to think about how we can work together to develop our country instead of war crimes court. So this is a constant narrative that, hey, war crimes court is going to bring more trouble. Let's reconcile and let's work together. What do you say to that?
Culturally, traditionally in most of our native settings, We have a long legacy of dealing with painful things that happen by forgetting about them, by not speaking of them again. Especially those of us, I think it's the entire country, but definitely those of us in the north central part of Liberia. We've had a series of rolling wars historically where the whole communities were decimated. If you study the story of Suakoko, you talk to the average person in Bone County, they cannot tell you why Suakoko was fighting. They cannot tell you how many thousands of people were killed in our internal conflicts in the North Central Territory. Whole villages, clans were burned. Horrible things happened. We don't talk about them. We don't pass those stories on. We like to forget about pain. We have I'm sure every language that's spoken in Liberia, they have a saying about forgetting about very horrific things that happen and moving on. This is unfortunately a cultural thing about us as Liberians. And in that context, I think a lot of people, the thing already happened, let's forget about it and move on. It is deep-seated and it's part of our cultural response to pain and tragedy. And that's how we've managed to raise our children without a memory of what we've experienced. This is just something that's a fact. I am very much looking at the war in its full context, and I think we should be really talking about reparations. I'm not saying we should not have a war crimes court, but we need to talk about reparations. There are so many documents that have come out where the US government and other global players have released documentation detailing their involvement, their manipulation, their instigation of our conflict. And they're so brazen and arrogant about it, they're publishing it. You can look these things up online. And they're publishing these things, and we're just sitting down here. This is outrageous. Yeah. We should be demanding some form of reparations. At what point do we stop begging and start saying, hey, you guys actually, armed these people. You trained them. You sent them here to kill us, to destroy our infrastructure. What are you going to do in return?
Help us. Yeah.
You elect the right people.
To wrong the right, to atone for what you've done. It is not only the warlords, but those that sponsored and instigated the problem.
Thank you, Cole. That's a point there. Mr. Kunney, I have a question here for you from Yanni San. He said, if our lawmakers are not interested, why won't a caring stranger like Dr. White help us? If we are left alone, we will start eating each other again soon. I have no problem with Dr. Allen's involvement. Inaction will cause the U.S. taxpayer more money in the future.
Dr. Allen is here. He's British, right? He's not American.
His ancestry, yeah.
His ancestry is birth. He's British. Maybe he lives in America, but he's a British citizen.
Hello?
It says he's American.
You got a question? Go ahead. Your response.
Well, look, listen, that is not a solution, honestly. Consistent with one of the major planks of my argument here, that societies and institutions that are developed, they didn't reach to that level by donation. Nobody donated these things to them. We have to find a way to work together for a better society for ourselves. The fact that we cannot do it, so we should give it to foreigners, it's not. It's a cut away. We are not willing to make the kind of investment that will yield the dividend that will put us in this position. Nobody wants to create awareness in our country. Nobody wants to conscientize our people. Nobody wants to set long-term political goals, teaching people civic responsibility, civic duty. Anytime we enter the political process, we want immediate benefit.
And that includes the government, right, Mr. Kunney?
It includes everybody. I mean, I'm not include everybody. So again, we as Liberians, both government, opposition, interest group, we have to define the kind of country we want for ourselves. Running to the American embassy, running to this embassy is not a solution.
You got to call your party chairman.
The good structure, the good structures, the institutions that we run to were not donated by God to anybody. They fought.
Wow. And so we must fight with the help of the president.
We must fight with everybody, with the help
Thank
of
you.
everybody.
With the president leading us.
Thank
No. I come in, Dennis.
No, let me get this question in, because we're almost out of time. So we have 5 minutes. Mr. Gongloe, there's this thing that we all fought the war. So Kafumba Soare said, if the sole objective of setting up the War Crimes Code is about addressing the conduct of war, I think every single Liberian will be incriminated.
Yeah. You see, but Ja, that's exactly the point I was making.
How would that be incriminated?
But there is a misunderstanding on what, if we have a tribunal, what the tribunal is set to do and what the tribunal will not do. Okay, if you read the TRC report, the TRC report is not even just talking. It recommended certain category of alleged perpetrators to face certain kind of trial. And they recommended, Palaver Hall forum for certain kind of perpetrator. Okay, so this question speaks to the dilemma that the campaigner for the tribunal are facing. There is gross misunderstanding about what the tribunal will do and why it will not do. And I mean, this question, I believe, is coming from a very educated person. If he's confused to even ask such a question or make such a statement, you can see what people in my village in Glacier will even think. I mean, it speaks to that. But I wanted to make a point to just make a quick point.
30 seconds.
Mr. Kunney, no one in this forum tonight has said that we should go to white people or we should go to foreigners. No one has said that. I'd like to be very clear. No one has said that. In fact, my main argument has been there has been a failure in leadership from successive government. We have not had a commitment to the country called Liberia, and that's why we are where we are now. Okay, when you see people going to European embassy, American embassy, it indicates lack of trust because we don't have a leadership. When you see people go to the executive mansion with petition, it's because the legislature has made itself to be that way. A classic example is President Salif sent a letter to the legislature to advise him more than 1 year. Has our elected officials even acted on that?
President
it speaks to why people run away from them.
Thank you. We almost got to close. We say, wow, I have my sympathy, Dennis. Vivian, thank you. And this last comment by Harrison Bajibo, in contrast to George Boley and Prince Johnson himself was executing people. Then another difference between those guys and Prince Johnson is the rest of them are quiet, but Prince Johnson is boisterous about his actions and continuing to bully the whole country. That said, Prince Johnson is like bamboo. They say the ugly people go draw water, then bamboo start complaining.
Every Sunday.
Somebody call your name. But thank you so much for the comments, and the discussion. I want to thank our viewers also. We will go around the room and get your closing comments. And we start with Mr. Gongloe, who is our first time panelist tonight.
No, Dennis, I'm quite excited to have the opportunity to be here tonight. I know you've been behind me for several months now.
I was even surprised.
If I'm more than a year, even today, I was not willing to come. But I hope I'm going to make it next time. But the discussion has been stimulating. Actually, it has been fruitful. I think I will make it my business to come next time. But I think we live in tonight, and the point must be made that Liberians in a collectivity are now opposed to accountability. Even if you go in the villages, they are united on this. It's just the way the message has gone to them. The confusion about what it would take has been the issue. And there are agents, provocateurs of those who are opposed to accountability, who, for example, lead the misinformation campaign. All of what we're saying here, the Economic and War Crime Court or Forum or Tribunal, we are one the French logging companies that were behind Chancellor. I want these French logging companies, the Italian logging companies that operated in Liberia. I want these people to return the money they took from our natural resources. The Americans companies, European companies that operated in Liberia during the war year, behind warring factions that didn't pay taxes. I want these people to be held accountable. That's why some of us want the Economic Crime Court.
Thank you, Mrs. Famulai.
I just think that, this narrative about who is the loudest and who is this, it shouldn't matter. If the objective here is to find justice for victims of the war, we need to address this thing seriously, fairly, and we need to make sure that it is handled appropriately. Justice is going to come in one way or another. And even those who perpetrated and are now deceased, they can be convicted in their deaths, just so that the record is there, that, the government recognized that, these people committed horrible crimes, beheaded people, villagers, innocent people. And that is my hope one day. But I'm going to then reiterate what I said earlier. Reparations is a discussion we need to have. And we need to have it seriously. We need to do it without fear. We need to do so without fear.
Thank you. Mr. Kunney.
Well, I want to thank
CDC commentator.
No, they call him CDC Pape.
CDC commentator.
Cole, can you protect me? Because the moderator can't even protect me.
You are protected.
I don't know how long COVID protection can hold for till you say something that will come and remove it.
Listen, I want to thank my fellow panelists for this spirited discussion. I think there are two significant things that we agreed to on tonight, and it is very important because those agreements reflect, I think, the agreement in the general society. All of us here agree that there is a need for accountability, there is a need for the War Crime Court. We also do agree that the issue has been unnecessarily politicized, both by government and by opposition. When it serves the talking point of the opposition, they make it an issue. When it serves the talking point of the government, they make it an issue. So a major national issue like the War Crime Court is like a political football. We have to find a way around that. My only point of divergence here is maybe where does the responsibility lies? I'm someone who is opposed to, who don't believe in an imperial presidency. I believe that we should develop institutions and structures to hold everyone accountable, including the president. The president is not above the law. And to the extent that we keep deferring to a president, I think we are extending this whole concept of an imperial presidency. The TRC report long made was given to the Liberian people. The legislature was to codify the TRC report into law. I don't have any information whether they've even done that. On the issue of economic court, we can even set that up if we want to do that as a country. We don't even need international support. When it comes to the War Crime Court, I believe we need significant international engagement to do that, because to the extent that we can't even agree that somebody misappropriated people's money, I don't think we even stand the ground to begin to go after perpetrators of war crime. Some of them that still got generals and former generals that may be awaiting their orders. So this is the only point I have. And my closing point is that we have to go above this situation in Liberia where we keep politicizing everything. Look, in Ghana,
you made that point already.
In Ghana, the political parties in Ghana, they've been able to come together, both political parties and government have been able to come together to ban political vigilantism. But in Liberia, when the violence is conducted by our people, we support it. When it's conducted by the other people, we condemn it. So, I mean, I'm just talking about broad national consensus on things that benefit all of us. And we don't necessarily have to be partisan. Clean voter roll benefit all of us. Political violence, when we kick it out of our system, it benefits all of us. And I think we need to be forming consensus around these issues. War crime could benefit all of us. There shouldn't be any politics about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kunney. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to remind everybody tonight, and thanks to all of the panelists for their expertise, experience, and wealth of knowledge shared here tonight. But I just want to remind all of us that Liberia as a nation is still party to almost all of the major treaties that constitute the ground for war and economics, or let's say war crimes court, particularly, right? They are party to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhumane, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment, the Rome Statute, the International Criminal Court, and the Geneva Convention of 1949, and other additional protocols. Any of these protocols by themselves constitute the grounds for war crimes. So I see that people have gotten this debate stuck up in the TRC, even Senator Johnson himself. Throw the TRC away. If there is no TRC, there is still enough ground for war crimes court, minus the TRC. The only thing the TRC does is that it has collected some evidences and witnesses who have testified. But without even the TRC, the international community will still, international court will still launch its own investigation to be able to get things done. Number two, I want to remind everybody that we live in a country where we all agree that heinous atrocities occur, where we all agree that people are hurting. There are two things at stake. Number one, bringing justice for victims. But number two, making sure that people get the message that the rule of law in Liberia will persist regardless of how long it takes, even if it is delayed. And let me say this to everybody. When our leaders fail and don't do their job, when the timing is right for the international community, they will step in. They will not wait for you. When they got ready for child stealer, they did not ask anybody permission. They forced the players' hands that be, and they got what they wanted. So let's keep delaying this thing. If we do not step up, the international community, when the timing align right with what they want, especially the United States, I can tell you, Mr. Ja, against our will, they will step in. I don't like it. I wish it is not the case. But I also don't like our leaders sitting there and playing political football with something that's important. And let me just say the very last thing here as I actually close.
10 seconds.
Yeah, as I actually close, Mr. Ja. We are sitting on a time that we should not be discussing about whether there will be war crimes court or not. I think the conversation now we need to shift to is how should the court be? And this is where the government, the opposition, everybody should now be talking about what are the possibilities in terms of the court, what should it look like, what the makeup should look like, where should we go? When you establish that, then you can establish what resources are needed. So when America comes or Britain comes to you, like, great, we want this stuff, we thought through it, and here's what is going to take for us to actually do this. Are you willing to be a partner? I think that's where the conversation needs to move now. It needs to move beyond just, oh, whether we should have a war crimes court or not. It needs to move to what type of war economic crimes court will make sense for Liberia based on the lessons learned.
Thank you so much. And remember, we are now live. We are now playing in Monrovia. You can tune into 107.9. We are there every Wednesday, 11 a.m. local time, Thursday, 5 p.m. local time, and Friday, 11 a.m. local time in Monrovia. Tune in to Hot FM 107.9 and listen to these intriguing conversations. Tomorrow also, we're going to have a very prolific writer called Yankwe Zeze, or Yangui Zeze. He's going to be talking on generating revenues in Liberia as one way of stamping out or reducing corruption in our society. Then on Monday, we have a presidential hopeful. Dr. Tefo Amos is going to be making his case why Liberian people should forget what they see and look at him. I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank our viewers for also staying here with us. Sorry we couldn't take calls or read most of your comments but I think it's been a very stimulating and energizing, educative, and informative discussion. This is what we do here. Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We also want your support. Keep tuning in, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on all major social media platforms, and get informed, get education, and get where we elevate the discussion. No noise. But we always end our discussion, our broadcast, with the song that says, "We are all Liberians." Whether you support the War Crimes Court or not, whether you are in the corner of people that committed the most outrageous, heinous crimes, and you think that let bygone be bygone, let's reconcile. Whatever place you stand, we are all Liberians, and we must do whatever it takes to protect our country, make it peaceful, and make it that glorious land of liberty. Until then, my name is Dennis Jar, closing on behalf of Focus on Liberia. Good night and God bless you.
We are Liberians.